No, so we had been talking about copyright and other forms of intellectual property, and I'm going to move on to something else now. You're not quite done yet with intellectual property. There's a course I want you to take. There's a link on the blog. You can find it in assessment 1 there. So one of the tasks you have for next week, in addition to summarizing what we've done in class on the blog, is you're going to go away and take this course. It's an online course. I think it might use Flash, which means it won't run on your iPad or Pod or iPhone. In fact, it probably won't run on any phone at this stage, I'm not sure, but anyway, that's another issue. So anyway, so you can take that course online. You want to get about 80% in that, or keep doing it until you do. And at the end of that, you have the option of reporting your score to someone. You can report it to me at colin.manning@cit.ie. So you can do that over the weekend or over the course of next week. But you want to get that done next week sometime. It covers many of the things we've already seen, like copyright, but it also deals with privacy and with libel. And we saw on the news this morning the outcome of a libel case. Now the course is based on US law, but many of the principles are the same in Irish law, although it's much easier to secure a finding of libel in Ireland than it would be in the US. So now you'll find the link to that course on the blog. Take that course, get a minimum of 80% in it, send the result to me, and then you might want to comment on your blog on something you found interesting or unusual or strange, whatever. Okay, so that's a good little course, and it covers some very useful material. As an aside, that course allows you, if you are of a mind to, if you pass that course, there's an insurance company will actually insure you as a blogger against being sued, and provided you pass that course, they will insure you, so that if someone tries to silence you, you'll have lawyers too. Now, I don't know if you can buy that here, but it's an interesting concept. Many bloggers argue, and many courts have recognized that they are similar to journalists in the traditional sense and should have some of the same protections that society affords journalists. But it depends. You know, if you're blogging on the ground with troops in Iraq, that's one form of blogging. And if you're blogging about Britney Spears' hair and makeup and outfits, that's perhaps another kind of blogging. And perhaps one is journalism and perhaps one isn't. But I'm sure even that is open to debate. So anyway, we're going to move on from that, but you're going to do that course next week. What we're going to start looking at now is some of the ways in which you might promote your site. So let's assume you have a site up on the web. We haven't really discussed how you would do that. We're going to do that another day, but I want to get a start on this so that you can make a start on the Google contest you're going to enter for assignment 3. So I want to get some of this stuff out of the way, even though in many respects it's a bit premature. But I did warn you earlier in the module that we're going to be chopping and changing a bit anyway. You know, it's going to do something for a little while and then move on to something completely different. So we're going to look at some of the ways you can promote your site. So you have a website that's selling a product, or you have a blog where essentially you're selling yourself. You might have a blog about technology or something. Maybe that's your business. So you have some sort of a website and you want to have people find it. The if you build it, they will come strategy doesn't quite work anymore. There are billions and billions of web pages, and if you want someone to find yours, you're going to have to make it easier for them. So designing a website and putting it online is really only part of the puzzle. You also need to make sure that your site can be found. So the number of ways of doing that really. So there are directories which are a little bit like search engines, not quite. They look familiar. They look like they might be search engines, but they're not in fact. So the directories and search engines, we'll look at those first. And then there's things like social bookmarking, ads, recommendations, and social networking and things like that. We've all seen that in Facebook, for example, you can like something. And so that would alert the people that are following you on Facebook that, do you follow someone on Facebook? I don't know if that's not the quite the right term, but anyway. The people in your social network on Facebook would be made aware of the fact that you're highlighting that site as being worth a look. I saw a post from the marketing manager from Fota, and he was comparing how many hits the Fota website gets via Facebook as opposed to via Google. And like they're getting way more from Facebook than from Google. So depending on your website, you're going to get some traffic, and you want people to find you. So we're going to look at some of the ways that happens. So what we're going to talk about today are internet directories, and then we're going to start taking a look at search engines and how search engines work. It's important to understand how search engines work so that you can make life easier for them. But the first thing we're going to look at are internet directories. So what a search engine does is it looks at what's on your page and the content of your page and extracts search terms and things like, terms telling you what it's about. What a directory does is it's usually maintained by humans, and they're interested in putting the site into a particular category. So you could imagine if you had a blog on shoes or something, and somebody thought it was really, really good, it might be added to a list of blogs in the fashion category. So when you go to a directory, it looks a bit like the yellow pages, but with a hierarchy. So you might have, health, education, computers is usually a category all by itself because there's so much stuff on the web about computers. And in the early days, that's what Yahoo was mostly like. You went to Yahoo and you had different categories, different top-level categories, and you clicked on one, and then you clicked down and got more specific and more specific and more specific until you found the one you want. So in a directory, CIT might be in the section, there might be education, and then there might be higher education, secondary education, primary education, whatever. You click on higher education. In that, there might be a category called colleges. And then that category of colleges, that might be broken down then by country. So then you click on Ireland, and then eventually you might see a list of all the colleges in Ireland. And directories can be really, really useful because sometimes you can't quite articulate exactly what it is you're looking for, or sometimes you might be interested in a general area and you're looking to read around it a bit. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and so you don't know what to look for. So if you were interested in web design or web development or something, you might not even know what the main areas are. You might not know what the tools are called. So you could go to a directory and find that sort of category, and then you'd see a list of sites. A very useful feature of directories is that that list of sites was compiled by humans. So somebody thought it was interesting enough to put it in there. A person saw it and thought it was good enough to list. So right away there, maybe you're ruling out, like, 60-70% of the crap that's out there, and you've got you're only fishing in a pool of quality stuff, which makes a big difference. So if we were interested, for example, in digital video, we might go to a directory like this. This one is called DMOZ, and this is a fairly large one. It's the main one, really, in terms of directories. And so here, in the DMOZ view of the world, the entire internet is broken up into what? 1, 2, 3, about 15, 16 categories. So if we're interested in digital video, well, obviously computers there is the way to go. So we click on computers there. And then inside in computers, there's a section on multimedia. So you might have to read around there and see. But certainly multimedia seems like the best match if we're looking to find out about digital video. We click on multimedia, and then inside there, there's a section called digital video. So that seems obvious, like that's the one we're looking for. And then you'd click on that, and you'd get a list then of different sites. Now that's a very different experience from going to Google and saying digital video. And you would probably get different sites as well, in a different order. Here it seems to be in alphabetical order anyway, for starters. But there would certainly be a lot of overlap also. So directories basically break up the entire internet into categories. And then a website will belong to a particular category. So it's great for browsing. If you're interested in a thing, you don't know much about it, or if you know one or two good sites, you might find similar sites around the same topic. But the most important feature really is that it's built by humans for the most part, which can really improve the quality. Okay? You can submit a site to a directory, and really you have to submit. They don't go crawling, they don't go searching for sites. So if you find a site that you think is good, or if you've published a site, more importantly, and you want people to find it, well, you could publish it, you could submit it to a directory for listing. And then if it's good, if it's unique, the threshold for unique, by unique what they mean is it's just not a bunch of copy and pasted stuff. Lots of things on the internet are just copies of other things on the internet. And you're like, well, where's the value in that, One copy will do us. So if it's different enough, if it's valuable enough, and if it's appropriate for the directory, do you know what I mean? Like, if it's a directory targeted at kids, for example, it might just not be appropriate what you have. And there might be various other criteria. But people would actually look at that, review that, and then decide whether to include it in the directory or not. So you've got some major quality assurance going on there straight away. Now that's not to diss Google and its results, but It's a different way of doing things. And in the early days, that was kind of the main show in town. It wasn't the only show in town, but certainly Yahoo was like that. I mean, I remember I got my first, well, one of my first jobs by submitting my CV to Yahoo. And it was so small at that time that they had like a section for CVs, and then there was like A, B, C, D, and I put mine in with the M's. So there was like CVs, people whose surname begins with M, and there was maybe, 200 there or something. And mine was one of them. Obviously, you couldn't do that now. You would just have too many. And so that's one of the reasons we kind of moved away a bit from directories, is that you couldn't put everything on the internet into directories. It's just the internet is too big. So now they work mostly by having, a selection. And you would hope then it's the quality stuff. There were some issues as well with directories in that where do you put something into a category? So if you're talking about religions, you have, Islam, Christianity, Judaism, I suppose Mormonism might fit into, Mormonism is probably a form of Christianity, so that would fit in there. I remember there was a controversy. There's a group of, I suppose fairly large group, of Jews who believe in Jesus. And so do they fit in then into Judaism, or is that a branch of Judaism, or is that a branch of Christianity? So you do get issues like that in directories that can make things a bit complicated. And you can always find someone somewhere to, stir up a controversy over something. You could see how if you have just a regular search engine, issues like that don't come up so much. No. So there's the Open Directory project, which we saw there, dmoz.org, and that's a particularly good one. And it's trying to be the largest human-edited directory on the internet. Now that's important. We could all make directories. It would be an interesting project, actually, to write a program that makes a directory. But you'd wonder how good it would be. So it's like all the other directories, but the editors are generally internet users who work for free, and it's going for quality there and size. You could see how, if you were particularly interested in handball or something, let's take a slightly less popular sport. If you were big into handball, you might decide that you were going to make a directory of handball sites. So you might find, the top 20, 30 handball sites. There might be some major handball players who have blogs, and you might include those. So you could imagine how the world of handball is small enough that might be an achievable task, that you could break up the world of handball into a bunch of different categories and populate those with sites. Now, being listed on that might not be particularly useful, but if everybody knew about your handball directory, it might be the place to go. So the Open Directory project is trying to be a directory for everything. Now, one of the main differences between the Open Directory project and some others is that the data in the Open Directory project is open source. So no one is claiming to own it. So they're giving it away for free. And so you can go and download the entire contents if you want and do whatever you want with them, which is nice. You can't always do that. You can also connect up to the database if you want. And so Google, for example, would use the Open Directory project as part of what it does. So some of the sites connect up with each other, and we'll see an example of that. So the Open Directory project anyway is open. No. So this is just saying that other websites use the Open Directory project also and its contents. So, for example, if Google is examining a web page, it can see what's in the page. It might be hard to get a handle on precisely what the page is about in the broader sense. But if it turns out that a human has gone to the trouble of putting that web page or that website into the recreation food category of the Open Directory project, well, that tells Google something it might not have known. So there's some intelligence there that can be shared. So the main advantages of a directory, and the big one really is the quality. Like somebody, a person, has actually looked at it and decided it was good enough and unique enough and appropriate enough to be included in that category. Now you might disagree with them. You might think their standards are low, but even on a bad day, you'd be looking at, you know, the top 40% of what's out there and ignoring the bottom 60%. It's nice from a user's point of view that you can sort of browse around. So if I was looking for ideas for this module, and God knows I might be short a few, I could go to the computer's internet web section of the Open Directory project, and I might say, oh yeah, that's something I didn't think of. That might be nice to discuss in class, or that might be an interesting thing to do, or that's an interesting slant. So it can help you find things you didn't know enough to look for. A bit like if you go into, when you can go into a bookshop with the name of the book that you want and come out with it, just as you go into Google looking for something specific and come away with it. But it's nice to go to a bookshop and just sort of stand in the general section of the kind of stuff you're interested in and have a browse around. And that's something you can do with a directory. With Google, if you do a search, you might get too much information, whereas with a directory, you get less. Less isn't always good, but you know, sometimes it's very good, depending on what you're doing. One of the problems, though, is that it might not be possible to get your site listed on a directory. Someone might decide it's not good enough, or not new enough, or not interesting enough. And obviously, not everything is going to be listed, but that's kind of the point of a directory. Whereas Google would aim to have everything, the whole web. So you're trading off, you know, quality and selectiveness for comprehensiveness. So any questions on that? So what we're going to start looking at now is search engines, which is, as you can see from what I've said, it's different. Most people just use search engines, and most people just use Google. There was a time before Google, and I remember we were all horrified. This new search engine came out, and at the time, if you went to some place like Yahoo, there was a place where you could search, but then there was all this information, all this other stuff. It was like the front page of a very dense newspaper. And like, because people were going there, they were advertising at you, you know. And Google decided, well, if someone is looking for something on the web, we could just let them look for it. And so you went to Google, and it was just this blank page with the logo and a spot to type in what you wanted, which you're familiar with now. Bing, by contrast, wanted to do much the same, but not be exactly the same, so that you have your photo, that big picture on Bing every day. But still the same idea. You've come here to search. I'm going to help you do that. I'm not going to overload you with stuff. which was a change. Now, so we're going to look at how search engines work. So they're the most popular way of finding pages on the internet. I remember long time ago someone saying that the internet's going to become so big and the web is going to become so big and so vast that people think they're going to make money by publishing content on the web. But the people who are actually going to make the money are the people who help people find the content on the web. And of course, whoever it was said that was exactly right. Google's making plenty money. Google doesn't actually produce any content. It just helps you find other people's content. And we're very grateful to them for that. Now, so when you are publishing a website then, you would like to be as high up on the list of results as possible. And search engines are useful, or we find them useful, if I'm looking for something particular and I do that search, the higher up on the list of things that it shows me, the higher up the thing I want is, the more valuable I think that search engine is. And that's the measure by which a search engine would be judged. So there was a new search engine came out a few years ago called Cool, C-U-I-L, and it's gone now. And people were annoyed with it because some of the results that would come up with very high up weren't relevant to what they were looking for. So we're really used now when we're looking for something to having it appear on the first page of our Google search. I mean, I wonder how often, how far down, how many pages in do we go? I've probably never gone past 5 or 6. No, that's if I was really stuck for something. So if you want, pizza in Cork, you Google pizza Cork, and there better be Cork pizza on the first page. If not, you're going to... I wonder, would you keep clicking until you got the pizza you want, until you found a place that had pizza and was in Cork? Or would you just go to a different search engine? You might switch to a different search engine quicker, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how many people are even aware that there are alternatives to Google. I mean, searching something and Googling something have almost become the... I'm not sure if any of those search engines are even at the races anymore. Now, so depending on how many pages you have to wade through, you decide that search engine is good or not. And so Google is successful because it manages to put what you're looking for on the first page or two. And so that's why you find it useful. So this looks a bit kind of old-fashioned. Well, the screenshot here looks, the format looks slightly older than is the moment, I think. But so you basically put in your search term up here, you hit search, and then you get a list of pages. On the right there, you have sponsored links, and they're clearly identified as sponsored links. And those are links that someone has paid to put there. So if you're Googling pizza in Cork, it might make sense for someone who's selling pizza in Cork to advertise there on the right. The only thing is, I mean, there probably are only a few pizza places in Cork anyway, so it might not be worth the money because they'll find you anyway in the search. If you were those college dinners people and someone is searching for pizza in Cork, well, it might be worth your while advertising there. Because maybe someone who's buying pizza might be interested in buying your product. They mightn't even know you exist, so they can't Google you to search for you to find you. But you know, that might be a good place for college dinners to advertise, for example. So the ads there are based on what the advertisers think is relevant in terms of searching. So if you're searching for something, those people there have decided you might want them. Okay? In the regular results then, they're returned in the order of relevance to your search terms. And that's the key there. You want to be up there somewhere in the, you know, the first page or maybe the second page, depending on your website. I mean, if you're a car rental company, you want to be on the first page. If you're a hotel in Cork, you maybe want to be on that first page. Now, so there are a bunch of different search engines. I used to always use Alta Vista, but I've kind of switched to Google now. And I think Bing just came too late to the party for me to bother. It's perfectly fine, but I hardly ever use it. And Baidu is the main one that people in China use. Different search engines will give you different results. And we judge their usefulness then on how relevant those results are to us. This interesting site here, this is an interactive yokamajig you can look at if you go to that URL. And it shows you how the different websites are connected. So Google receives information from the Open Directory project at DMOZ. Okay? And if you take then, say, HotBot and Lycos, it takes results from Google. So different sites sometimes use each other's information and they're connected in different ways. And some own others and things. You can go to this web page if you want and have a mess with that. It's interesting enough, but it's no great shock to anyone that Google is at the center of this graphic. I mean, in terms of search, Google is the center of the universe at the moment. And of course, Google keeps getting better. It has a head start. And the more people use Google also, the better it gets. In many respects, we're helping Google get better every time we use it. So it can be hard for other people to enter that business. So the next thing we're going to talk about is how search engines actually work. But I don't think we'll do that today. I think we'll leave that till the next day. Any questions on any of that? Okay.